Okay, we are going to start reading The Singing Tree. Okay. Chapter 1, and this is by Kate Seretti. The first chapter is called Uncle Moses. It's fine, I don't need to relock it. Okay, Uncle Moses. Uncle Moses took off his small black skull cap and wiped his forehead. Grimy fingers left black smudges on his silvery hair and came away wet from perspiration. He rubbed them absent-mindedly against his black alpaca smock while he gazed at the crowded shelves in his crowded store. Outside, the sun was shining. The long village street was gay with freshly whitewashed houses and blooming geraniums in the blue and green window boxes. The air was fragrant with late acacia blossoms. The whole village was resounding with the laughter of playing children, mixed with the cackling of hens, the honk-honk of waddling geese, the yips and barks of dogs. But the sunshine, the fragrance, colors, and sounds of June did not penetrate into the dim, crowded store. Here, the dusty smell of bolts and dress goods mingled with the smells of cheese, salted herring, machine oil, kerosene, harness leather, peppermint candies, bacon and sausages, all spiced. Hey, Isaac, can we just finish that later? All spiced with the odor of marjoram, dried pepper, and anise, and garlic. Anise was something we had in Turkey a lot. It's almost a licorice flavor. Outside in the sunshine, thousands of bees droned happily, gathering honey from the clusters of acacia blossoms. Inside, Uncle Moses went to work again among the clusters of pepper, spices, and sausages hanging from the ceilings, humming a tuneless little song that sounded just like the happy droning of the bees. He moved here and there between crates and barrels, piles of plowshares and shovels, rows of shoes, boxes filled with ribbons, toys, candles. Now and then he poked at a bunch of mixed merchandise. Ho hum la la, he hummed, 24 pocket knives. 3 bolts red percale. Ho hum hum. He squeezed his small bent frame into every nook and cranny, looked at all the shelves, peered into half-empty barrels and boxes, poked at piles of junk. Finally, he opened a small door in the back of the store and disappeared, closing the door behind him. The store was empty for a few minutes, and then the bell of the street door jangled and a boy stuck his head in. Uncle Mo, he called. No one answered, so he opened the door wider. Uncle Moses, where are you? He isn't here, Kate, he said over his shoulder. He has got to be here. Uncle Moses is always in the store, declared Kate with conviction, pushing him inside. Uncle Mo, where are you? We want some red satin ribbon. I don't, exclaimed the boy indignantly. I want to go home and milk the cows. You girls with your ribbons and laces and fancy clothes wasting my time waiting in stores for hours. Hours indeed, retorted Kate. We just stepped in a minute ago. Why, the bell is still jingling. Besides, who is so particular about ribbons and flowers on his hat? You are, my dear cousin Jancy. She pointed an accusing finger at him. Well, anyway, he evaded the point. Uncle Mo isn't here, so we can go home. Come on, Kate. Not without my red satin ribbon, I won't, said Kate, seating herself on top of a keg with the air of someone who is going to stay there until she gets her way. She spread her pleated skirts around her, dug her small fists into her waist, and the way she looked at him out of his sparkling, mischievous eyes spelled, "What are you gonna do about it?" He answered the challenge by making a determined move as if to carry her off by force, but it came to nothing because the little door in the back creaked open and Uncle Moses emerged. He was covered with cobwebs, and his wrinkled old face had a preoccupied look. For a moment he didn't see them, but he kept on humming. La la la, stock up the wool and tan. Isaac, put it down. Tanned leather wool. Kate began to laugh. Uncle Moses, what in the world are you doing? And here's a really cool, some good pictures here, guys. It's a really neat drawing. Uncle Moses, what are you doing? Kate and Johnsy, cried Uncle Moses, hurrying forward as fast as the boxes, crates, and barrels would let him. This is a pleasure to see you in my store. Sit down, Jancy. We're in a hurry, Uncle Mo, said Jancy. Give her those pink or red frills she wants, he added gruffly, so I can get home. You know father. Uncle Moses smiled. Yes, indeed, I know him, and so do you, Jancy. He wouldn't hurt a fly, let alone his only son. Johnsy squirmed. That's just it. He left this morning for the corrals, and he told me to harrow the corn and do this milking before sundown, and I started to until this. He jerked a derisive thumb toward Kate, started to yowl into Mother's ears for red satin ribbon, and here we are. Father will just look at the cord and then look at me, and then I'll feel like a worm or something. Will you hurry up now? He almost shouted at Kate. Kate settled herself more firmly on the keg. He's just jealous, Uncle Mo, because Auntie is making a new bonnet for me with bought ribbons, and he can't have any for his hat. But tell me, she'd hurried on with an impish glance at her sputtering cousin. Tell me what have you been doing back there? Just look at your nice black coat all covered with dust and cobwebs. Looking over my stock, taking inventory, said Uncle Moses, rubbing cobwebs off his shoulders. He peered at Kate over his glasses. That means, I know what it means. Daddy showed us how to keep books. Remember, Jancy? He wanted Uncle Martin to keep the books on the horses and sheep and everything, but he wouldn't. Of course not. He doesn't need books to tell him what he has. He can count the beasts he sells, and who could count them on the range, I'd like to know, snapped Jancy. You keep books, don't you, Uncle Mo? Asked Kate. Not on paper, in here, replied Uncle Moses, smiling and pointing to his forehead. This is the only safe place to keep records in. Safe from fire or nosy people or gnawing mice. Don't you ever forget anything? Asked Kate, slightly mollified. How could I? I was brought up in this store. So was my father and his father before him. I can lay my hands on anything in this store with my eyes closed. Even Jancy looked dubious now. Horses and sheep were different. It was easy to remember where to find them because they were fenced in at the corrals and pastures, and that was all there was to it. But to remember all these different strain things, he couldn't quite believe that. Anything, Uncle Mo? Supposing I wanted to buy... He looked around, trying to think of something he couldn't see in the store, when the doorbell jingled and a young woman walked in. Uncle Mo, he said importantly, after waving a casual greeting at Kate and Jancy, I want the very best coat buttons there are in the world, a full dozen of them. Silver buttons, cried Jancy, looking triumphantly at Uncle Mo. Supposing you wanted to buy silver buttons, where would you find them? On the top shelf by the window in a little box behind the mouse traps, said Uncle Mo without a moment's hesitation. Fetch them for me, Jancy. You are younger than I am. Just step on this nail keg here, way back in the corner. That's the one. He took the box from Jancy, blew the thick gray dust from the cover, and opened it. The very best silver buttons there are in the world. Maybe. He whispered the maybe. A full dozen of them. He took one carefully from its bed of white cotton, rubbed it on his sleeve, then held it up in the slanting sunlight, watching the young man's face. Just the thing for a new blue coat, Peter. For a wedding, maybe? Peter's eyes were shining. Red and green stones in it, too. Sure, it's for my wedding, but... His face fell. I can't afford silver buttons. I need a cow. Uncle Mo folded his hands and peered at him sideways. How many sheep have you got now, Peter? Why?
We're going in the guest room.
Is it too loud out here?
No, our computer won't do it very loud, so we're going to try doing it in a small...
Okay. Why, about 40, stammered Pete, who couldn't see the connection between buttons and sheep, let alone the cow. 40, Uncle Moses nodded, and then he lifted his eyes to the ceiling and mumbled rapidly to himself. I could, he turned to Peter again, I could sell you a nice gentle cow for the wool off 40 sheep and throw in the buttons for good measure. He gave the button another vigorous rub and held it against his black coat. Isn't it beautiful? Well, what do you say, Peter? It has got to be a good milker, hesitated Peter, staring at the glittering buttons. Good, nodded Uncle Moses, for whom the sale was concluded. Here are the buttons. You can come for the cow tomorrow and deliver the wool as soon as you get around to shearing. And now, what else can I do for you? I guess that's all. I don't need anything else, faltered Peter. Leave it to me. I know you do. New boots, something for Mary, perhaps a new harness for the team, suggested Uncle Moses. No, can't sell me a thing, Uncle Mo. Goodbye. Peter marched out. He was halfway to his team and wagon when the voice of Uncle Moses floated after him. Jancy, tell your father that the new brass-studded harness I ordered came in yesterday. It's a shame to drive a good team with that old patched-up harness. What will people say? Peter stopped in his tracks. There was only one team in sight, his own. He looked back at Uncle Moses, who was standing in the doorway, apparently not paying any attention to him. What's wrong with this harness? He called. Uncle Moses turned around, looking very innocent. Oh, it's your team, Peter? Well, you could oil it up maybe for the wedding, you know. Or maybe people wouldn't notice the mended parts anyway. Looking at your silver buttons on the new blue coat, some might say that you are thinking more of yourself than of your bride, taking her home behind a team with an old harness on and all. But I wouldn't pay any attention to the gossip. Peter was back in the store. Where is that new harness you ordered for Mr. Nagy? He demanded. Why, It's hanging right behind the door there, Peter, complete with brass studs, tassels, and all. Just look at it. Good enough even for Mr. Nagy's team, huh? Take a first-class team to show off trappings like that. Ah, Peter said, so, well, I've got a good team as anybody around here. How much? He asked, fingering the harness. Uncle Moses rubbed his nose thoughtfully, then came back with another question. How much money did you say you had saved up for a cow? 200 pango, said Peter absent-mindedly, patting his pocket. Uncle Moses shook his head in disapproval. That's an awful lot of money for just a plain cow. Why, this harness with all the brass and things cost only 195. This is your lucky day, Peter. You come to Uncle Moses for buttons, and you get a cow and a new harness and a dozen silver buttons. But I didn't, Peter began, but Uncle Moses, by some sleight of hand, had fished a braided carriage whip from behind his back. And this beautiful whip is a gift, if you pay cash for the harness now. Here's a really cool drawing. These drawings are really nice, really pretty. I should have showed the first one to that too. He finished the sentence as if Peter hadn't spoken. Jancy will help carry the harness to your wagon, won't you, Jancy? Huh? Oh, yes, of course, stammered Jancy, absorbed in Uncle Moses' salesmanship. Watching and listening, he'd completely forgotten about going home, corn, cows, and everything. I don't need any help, thanks, grumbled Peter, reaching for the harness. You don't want the whip? Said Uncle Moses gently. Sure I do. Here, 5,195. But he counted the money into Uncle Mo's palm. He grinned at Jancy. Tell Mr. Nagy that I saw the harness first. And you must all come to dance at my wedding. You too, Uncle Moses. Woo, sighed Jancy when the door slammed after Peter. Uncle Moses, this is too much for me. Buttons, cow, wool, harness, whip. How did you keep all that straight? Where will you get the cow? And Uncle Mo, he wagged a finger accusingly, did my father order a new harness? Did I say he had? Chuckled Uncle Moses, spreading out his hands. You said for me to tell father. Oh, Jancy began to laugh. I remember now. Oh, Uncle Moses, you are funny. Well, he did need a new harness, giggled Kate. Uncle Mo, have you got a cow too somewhere in a little box behind the mousetraps? Uncle Mo shook his head. He had a faraway look in his eyes. You know who for whom I had ordered those buttons? 17 years ago, he went on, a handsome young man came in here and said, Uncle Mo, I want a dozen of the very best buttons, silver buttons for my wedding suit. I ordered 2 dozen for him to choose from, 12 with blue and red stones and 12 with green and red. He took the dozen with blue and red stones because he said that the blue stones sparkled like the eyes of his sweetheart, and the red stones glowed like the love in my heart. What a nice thing to say, said Kate. Who was he? His name was Martin Nagy. Father, Uncle Martin? Exclaimed Kate and Jancy together. Uncle Mo smiled. And I've kept the other dozen behind the mousetraps ever since. Did you sell him a cow and harness and a whip too? Giggled Kate. Uncle Mo let this go unanswered. He was thinking of something else because he was scratching the end of his nose. Jancy, would you do an errand for me? Of course, Uncle Mo. Run over to the Viter farm and tell old Janus Viter that I would like to see him. On business. While Jancy was gone, Kate selected the red satin ribbon she wanted. This is for the new bonnet I'm to wear at Peter's wedding, she exclaimed. Uncle Moses was just wrapping it up when Jancy returned, followed by Janus Viter. He edged inside, twisting his weather-beaten hat between his hands. Uncle Mo, if you want me to pay that bill, I just haven't got the money. Now, Jamus, who is thinking of money? Soothed Uncle Moses. Young Nagy here was speaking about a cow, wondering where I could get a good, gentle one. Weren't you, Jancy? Sure, I wanted to know how... Jancy began to explain, but Uncle Mo raised his voice. So I thought of you, Janos. Now that your daughter is getting married, I thought maybe you would want to sell that brown cow of yours, maybe. Well, I kind of figured on giving it to Mary for a wedding present, hesitated Janus Viter. So it sounds like his daughter, Mary, is going to marry Peter. Peter has bought a cow for her already, a good milker, too. He was here a little while ago, remarked Uncle Moses, gazing intently at the ceiling. But I could pay you 150 pango for that cow today. Janos looked up interested. Uncle Moses bent forward and tapped him on the chest with one finger. And we'll forget about that old bill, Janos. Janos was visibly weakening, but Uncle Moses wasn't through yet. Then you could maybe buy those fancy, thin glasses Mary has her heart set on, for a wedding present, and only 15 pango for a full dozen with the pitcher besides. I could at that, smiled Janos. Uncle Moses was already counting out part of the money he had received from Peter. There. Now you don't owe me anything, Janos, and there are all the glasses all wrapped up nicely in the box behind you. Thank you, Uncle Moses, thank you. Mary will sure be happy with these. Janos Viter was backing out with the package held tenderly in his arms. Don't mention it. Bring over the cow tonight after milking, and don't break those glasses. When the door closed, he turned to Kate, chuckling. Books. Do I need books, I ask you? Jancy was frowning. Uncle Mo, I can't understand this. I'm dizzy. You sold Peter a cow you didn't have for wool he hasn't shared yet and a harness for the money he should have paid for the cow, and then you bought the cow Janos was going to give them anyway. My saints, it's all mixed up. Uncle Moses sat down next to Jancy on the crate. Dressed in shiny black from head to toe with his hunched shoulders and long, heavy nose, he looked like a benevolent old crow. He peered at Jancy with his head cocked sideways. You don't think I was very honest, is that it, Jancy? Well, Jancy blushed a deep red because that was just what had worried him. I don't understand. Because you don't know these people as well as I do. Look, Peter is a good, honest farmer, but he is young and a little reckless. He has a lot of friends in the village, single men of his own age who have been expecting a big party before he got married. The 200 pango was burning a hole in his pocket. I could see that when he came in. It would have been spent with nothing but a headache to show for it. Now he has a cow, the harness, a whip, and 5 pango left. Old Janos has the money. He needs it too. Mary has the glasses. I have the wool and a little profit. So, he spread out his hands. Everyone is happy. That's wonderful, Uncle Moses, cried Kate. But how do you figure it all out so fast? Not fast, Kate, smiled Uncle Moses. I sit here in the store all day, year after year, all my life, and I watch and I listen. They all come to me. I sell them wedding gifts, baby rattles, funeral shrouds. I sell them food, furniture, clothing. I don't have to go to their houses to know what they need. They don't have to tell me when they are hard up. I know it when the bills begin to grow that there is trouble. Then I begin to do the thinking and worrying for them, just as my father and grandfather did before me. They are young, these children of the soil. Their youth is renewed every spring with the fresh green plants and the newborn animals. Strong, young, healthy, but they don't like to think about money. We Jews are weak, Jancy, and we were born old. But in here, and he tapped his forehead again, in here lies your strength. Kate bent forward and laid a hand gently on his heart. And in here, Uncle Moses? Well, the old man smiled, I make money using my brains and lose money listening to my heart. But in the long run, my books balance pretty well. The hoarse, plaintive sound of a cowherder's horn broke the short silence, and Jancy jumped. Good heavens, Kate, the cows are coming in. Let's get home or Father will forget that I'm 13 years old and give me more than a look. Goodbye, Uncle Moses. He turned back from the open door to grin at him. And I think you're all right. He rushed out, shouting for Kate to follow. Before she left, she bent and shyly kissed the withered face of the old merchant. Bless you, Uncle Moses, she whispered and hurried out. Uncle Moses, alone in the dusty store, rose slowly to his feet. He looked up far beyond the peppers, spices, and sausages on the ceiling and spoke to someone there reverently. Thank thee for children like these. So it kind of sounds like he's maybe thanking the Lord for really cool children. And here's a picture that I didn't show earlier of Uncle Moses. These are really well done pictures. And this is life on the Hungarian plains. And they talk about Jancy and his cousin Kate. And that's what this is going to be about here on and this is a Newbery honor book. So should be really good. So we'll keep reading that every Monday and Wednesday.